Congress all set to return in 2 weeks. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is ratcheting up pressure on lawmakers to act on gun violence. The country's most powerful Democrat said just yesterday she would not take no for an answer after 2 mass shootings this month. But any push for reform faces opposition in the Republican-led Senate. As Congress struggles to address the issue, we wanted to talk to people who live with the repercussions of mass shootings every single day, and it is tough. Stephanie Melendez's father was killed in El Paso, Texas, earlier this month. He was shopping with his wife and granddaughter, 9 years old. He pushed them both to safety. The Reverend Sharon Risher lost her mother and 2 cousins in the Charleston church massacre. Richard Martinez's only child, Chris, was killed during a rampage in Isla Vista, California. And Nelba Marquez Green's little 6-year-old daughter, Anna Grace, was killed in the Sandy Hook massacre in 2012. Together, they all spoke of the seemingly impossible task of moving on after tragedy.
You go through periods of time when you do feel, the worst thing that's ever happened to me has already happened to me. But at the same time, I'm never going to recover. I don't want to get over it.
You do not?
I don't want to get over it. Chris was our only child. Getting over it would seem to me to be a bit betrayal of my son's memory, and I don't want to get over it.
But how do you go on if you don't get over it?
I feel like I have an obligation as a parent to my son, and that's the work that I do to try to stop gun violence.
You said, Sharon, before we got started, now all the shootings are ranked in categories. What do you mean?
So you have the hate crime category, you have the church category, you have the school category. Bottom line is, dead is a category.
People say it's about Second Amendment rights, the right to bear arms.
Yeah.
I have a right to see my daughter enter 8th grade this fall, and I don't get to do that. And I am grossly, as a mental health professional, offended by the words of our president and members of Congress linking mental illness to mass shootings.
You don't see it as a mental health issue?
The vast majority of people who are mentally ill are not violent by a long shot. Most of the gun violence that we see on a daily basis is related more to domestic violence and misogyny. One thing that isn't talked about a lot is suicides. Families who've lost a loved one to suicide suffer the same grief that we do.
Have any of you ever thought about suicide after this?
Yes.
Yes.
I would say in the early days, it was very dark. And I hope by me saying yes, others can be encouraged by hearing it and ask for help they need.
It was like I died. Chris was everything to me. He was the center of my life. I think the reason why suicide doesn't really Chris wouldn't want that. I'm all that's left of my son's memory. I'm keeping him alive by being alive.
I just want to be with her.
That's
That's really what it is. I want to be with her.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
I would, if I could, I would just say, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry you didn't get what you deserved. But I'll stay here for the work that needs to be done. But I just want to be with her.
I so feel that, Nelba, when you say, I just want to be with her. I just want to be with her.
I have this
It's hard to hear.
beautiful, brown-skinned, curly-haired, singing daughter. And I woke up one morning and I didn't have her.
We have to think about the people who are the shooters. In all of these cases, they were young white men in their 20s.
We don't like to talk about race in a lot of these mass shooting situations, but I think it's an important conversation to have.
But Sandy Hook wasn't a race issue.
It wasn't, but it permeates everything, because I'll tell you an interesting conversation my husband said to me shortly after the shooting, and he goes, I've spent my whole life as a black man in America trying to convey that I'm a safe person, especially in white environments. I look people in the eye. I make sure not to take up too much space because I'm a 6 foot, 6 inch, 300-pound black man. Yet a white person, boy, killed my daughter, and I'm not allowed to look at him or look at others in that way, right? I'm supposed to give a grace that I have never been given as a black man in America. However, I will. I wish people would give that to us And I sat in the passenger seat and I just cried with him.
Emmett Till's mother allowed people to see what had been done to her son's body, and that changed the game in the civil rights movement. Where are you all in people seeing the damage that is caused when your child, your father, your loved one is shot, massacred?
They need to see it.
You think they should see
They need to
it?
see, they don't, people are visual learners. People need to see the devastation.
I think it's a fair question. I think it's an important one to discuss. I think
How many times was Anna shot?
Many. Many.
Would you have wanted us to see that?
Absolutely not. If this beautiful 6-year-old baby, her living picture, her voice, her affect, everything about her alive didn't change you, her photo dead wouldn't change you either.
I say, if gun violence in America does not make your heart hurt, makes your soul cry, if you can't feel that, then you can't feel anything.
Your life is ordinary and everything is in place, and then in a moment, your world changes.
I live in El Paso, which has been named one of the safest cities. All I know is that my dad went and took my daughter shopping for clothes, and the next minute he was gone.
You feel like you're in a state of shock?
I think it would be called shock.
In the beginning, it was a fog and you couldn't see clear, but you learn to navigate day by day. One day might be a good day, another day, I don't want to get out the bed. And
Still?
yes,
Oh,
still,
still.
4 years later, I can't call my mom and ask her, how do you cook gumbo? To go to Charleston now is very difficult for me.
She mentioned like picking up the phone. There's times I still pick up my phone ready to call my dad, and I can't.
It is not fair to create this permanent underclass of people who have to do this. In addition to, didn't you say you have to go back to work next week?
Yes.
Are you thinking, Stephanie, I have to get back to living my life?
For my daughter, for my kids, you know, she's been through so much.
She was there.
She was there, and I need to show her that the world doesn't stop.
What would you all say to that? She's saying, I have to make life normal again. I have to get back to work.
I would, advice sucks.
Yeah.
That's the first thing I'm going to say. Advice sucks. And I'm answering because Gayle asked me, be gentle with yourself and honor the everyday.
But I do think there's the encouragement of El Paso strong, Dayton strong. How do you feel about that?
I mean, I know it's support, but it's like a reminder that this happened. It's a reminder every day.
Yeah.
In the beginning, it felt somewhat comforting. Oh, they haven't forgotten. But I think eventually people do move on and the bumper stickers fade. It is really, really wonderful to cheer El Paso strong or Sandy Hook strong, but it is even more helpful to us if that came with a commitment to lift us up forever, because we're not just grieving year one. I will grieve Anna until the day I die.
Where are you all on the issue of forgiveness for the shooter?
My sister was the first one to say, I forgive you, on the TV, and I started screaming and hollering like, 48 hours and you're talking about forgiveness? It took me almost a year, even being a reverend.
So you have forgiven.
I have now.
Why?
In order to get all of that anger and rage, I had to get to a point in understanding what I really believed in my faith and to be able to be free.
Where are you, Richard? Do you think you're capable of forgiving him?
No.
No, but where are you on forgiveness?
I just don't understand why it's a narrative we quickly go to after shootings. I'm glad you're asking the question because now other people can learn. I saw it in Newtown. All of a sudden the forgiveness families were in one bucket, and those were the wise families, and then the ones who were like, no, why should I have to forgive them, were seen as another. And they were asking that of Sandy Hook families 24 hours later, 48 hours later. And I'm like, wait, when did this become my responsibility to absolve the person and to absolve it? Because I feel like it's another way to let folks off the hook.
I listened to a woman talking about her experience in Las Vegas. I'm a veteran. I served during the Vietnam era. And when this woman was talking to me about the experience of what it was like to be there at that concert in Las Vegas, it reminded me of simulated combat.
We were given the option of visiting the classroom. And one of the questions I asked was, where's the toilet? And the answer to that was, we removed anything that had been destroyed by gun violence. So if an industrial toilet was destroyed by the firepower,
Because you're thinking, imagine what it did to the children.
we cannot, as a nation, say that is okay. Because I didn't sign a 6-year-old up for war. I signed her up for first grade. This is not our kids died because we were negligent. We have to address the injustice that we are visiting on American families. It's like a hell's lottery where if you lose today, you lose today. And that's not okay.
It's a hell's lottery, Nelba says, that we're all playing, you know, and it could affect any of us in this room, anybody who's listening to this at any time. And one of the reasons why we wanted to do this story is because I feel that we're becoming desensitized. Steve Hartman, who does beautiful pieces for us here at CBS, I've seen many stories, and after one shooting, he said, we mourn, pray, repeat, mourn, pray, repeat, and I've never forgotten those words. And I just want us to see that behind all of these stories, as we all know, there are people living lives and people's lives who are grossly affected for the rest of their lives.
It's woven into their family story for all time.
It is, and I can't, I really, once you hear it, you can't unhear it, and I can't stop thinking about it.